Okay.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone who's able to be here live this evening, and to anybody else. We will be recording and we'll be sending out that recording if anybody needs to view this material again. I'm Madison, and I'm so happy to introduce Chelsea as our guest speaker for this evening. She's also the director of Cake, so she's has a whole lot of experience. And tonight we'll be talking about farmers markets, specifically preparing for 2026. Now is the time to get those applications in. Chelsea has some pretty extensive practical experience in that world, so I'm excited to learn from her this evening. And let's see, we will ask everyone to complete a worksheet if you're looking to get into a farmer's market. We just have a couple questions to allow us to better help you. Also, one of the final questions on the worksheet is asking for future webinar topics. Like, what do you want to learn about? Um, so I'd love your feedback there as I'm in charge of coordinating them. So if you have any topics, please feel free to let me know. If any questions come up, you can raise your hand or leave a comment in the chat, and we'll have plenty of time for discussion as well. And now I'll turn it over to you, Chelsea.
Awesome. Thank you, Madison. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. A pleasure to be here talking about farmers markets, which are my favorite topic. And yeah, I could talk about them for way more than an hour. So yeah, thank you for being here. I'm excited to answer your questions. We'll probably do maybe like 15 minutes to half an hour of me just going over some basic information about farmers markets, because we'll probably get a lot of the same questions otherwise. And then I think the second half or so we'll be able to just have a discussion if you're having a struggle, or you maybe last year were having an issue with a farmer's market, or anything like that. Feel free to write that down, and we will go over those at the end. Um, so yeah, just to give you a general background on my experience. So I was the market operations manager at Fresh Farm for 2 years, which is actually the third largest farmers market organization in the country. So we had 30 markets, including some really, really large successful ones like the DuPont Farmers Market in Washington, D.C., and Mosaic Farmers Market in Virginia, downtown Silver Spring Market. And then I also did 3 years of managing markets for Fairfax County for the Park Authority. So I love farmers markets and working with small businesses. That's where I got my start in this industry. Um, so yeah, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Um, and I will keep an eye on the chat in case any questions. Feel free to drop if you have questions in the chat. I'll try to get to those if I can work them in. Otherwise, we will talk about them at the end. So yeah, so farmers markets are they can be they are a whole thing. It seems like you should just be able to maybe show up and set up your table. But the truth is, farmers markets are extremely competitive to enter, especially the markets where you're able to make a full living. The more successful the market tends to be the more difficult to enter. As you can imagine, competition grows as the market grows. If the market's really successful, there might be 50 people fighting for one spot versus, a new market where they might be accepting anybody who's willing to come and work with them. Um, so yeah, it's I say this not to intimidate anyone, but just to prepare you so that you don't, show up at the beginning of the season, maybe in like April, and think, oh, well, now I can sign up for the farmers market, when that application process happened likely in like December or January. So that's the biggest thing I want to emphasize. That is when most applications are due. And the application process for farmers markets is extremely important, because when market managers are making decisions about who to invite into the market, they want to look at everybody together and make sure that they're picking the most cohesive group of farmers to go together. A lot of times they're curating who's there. They don't want to have 30 apple orchards and one produce vendor and 30 bakers. They want to have, a good balance so that the farmer can be successful, but there's still plenty of selection for the consumer. Um, so yeah, it can be very competitive to get in. And so your application, turning it in on time, turning it in completely. I mean, I can't tell you how many vendors that could have been wonderful missed their opportunity because their application wasn't complete and it just wasn't compelling enough because of that. And I know it could feel like, oh, well, all this time I'm spending on 10 different applications, it feels like a lot of work, but um, the truth is, if you don't invest the time on those applications, you're likely not going to be selected unless you've made a really good connection with a market manager. Maybe you went in person to the market and they know who you are, and maybe you brought them a sample. That's a really good option if you're trying to get into a hard market. Um, but yeah, you need to do something to help yourself stand out, and your application is your first place for that. To look professional, to show that you're dedicated to the mission of their farmers market, and of course to tell them what products you have. Probably the number one thing that used to drive me a little crazy as a market manager and would get people rejected was just receiving an application with an unclear list of offerings. If you apply and we don't know what you're going to sell, we might just reject you. It just depends on the market. Like in my case, I was at very busy markets and they were very competitive. And so we didn't have time, frankly, to follow up. Even if we'd love to follow up with every farmer and help them, we just don't have time to follow up with every farmer and explain, why their application didn't meet standards or whatever. If you ask the manager, they will usually help you. Depends on how busy they are, and it might take them a little while to get back to you. But usually they'll give you an explanation if you ask, why wasn't I selected or what could I do to be more competitive? That might be a better way to approach it. Um, but yeah, and we can go over a few key things, a few key things to think about with your application. Um, well, it depends on your market. First of all, it's just like applying for a job, you have to tailor your resume a little. So if you're applying for a market that's producer only, and you should look into, especially depending on what you're producing, you should look at the market's rules and see, are they producer only? So producer only means that they only allow producers there that grow what they make, or they buy it locally. So like you can't go buy something and resell it. It's basically to eliminate resellers. The other thing some farmers markets are looking for is they are looking for folks that are sourcing locally. So if you're making, if you're a pastry, if you're a baker and you're using local apples in your danishes or something like that, that might be more compelling to a market manager than somebody who maybe they're using like artificial, whatever, like dye. So it just being on mission with the farmers market is really important. So definitely something if it's a market you really want to get into, you're going to have to do a little research and a little legwork to get in. The way it tends to work with markets, although not all markets are the same, depends who's running them, but the way it tends to work is any vendors that are in the market, as long as they remain in good standing, tend to be invited back year after year. So basically, it is a lot of work to do one time, but once you're in, it should be an ongoing revenue outlet for you. So it is worth doing that extra work to research the market you want to be in, make sure it's the demographic that makes sense for your products, make sure there's enough customer traffic there to support your products. Um, Not gonna talk poorly. All farmers markets are wonderful, but the truth is, some farmers markets are in a more advantageous location. Some are newer. Sometimes developments really want a farmers market because it builds the community, but it's going to build the community over 10 years. And in the meantime, it might not be enough to sustain your business. Um, I will say oftentimes you do have to get into markets early. Like as in when it's hard to get into a market once it's already good. But if you can kind of get into a market when it's on its upswing, or if it's a new market that has a lot of potential, then that's also something that you could do. and things I look for potential, um, especially, well, it depends on your area, but in my area, roadside visibility is essential. It's almost in everybody's area that roadside visibility is essential. So, having an easy visibility of the market and the ability to slow down and stop and turn into your market is honestly one of the biggest things. So if you are looking at a market and it's tucked way back in the corner and you're not, it doesn't have good roadside visibility and you stop at it and you're no, only seeing maybe a couple hundred customers shop there a day, that might not be a market that can sustain you. And we can talk about that a little bit later on, like what would be good versus okay. I'll give you some price ranges, like some income ranges for different vendors based on my experience. But circling back to the applications, so yeah, we talked about highlighting if you're using any local products, like if you're a baker, definitely highlight if you're a value added producer, highlighting any local products that you're featuring, any relationships you might have with other farmers. I mean, the biggest thing, which this is not easy to do, but if you're a small producer, you can sometimes do it, but they really love it when you actually work with somebody in their farmers market. So if you want to make jams and you're buying strawberries from their strawberry vendor, it's a really nice like synergy. And farmers market managers love synergy. So, um, let's see, other quick, less fun things. You're going to need insurance. I'm sorry, everybody. I know it's the worst news to deliver. But it's not so bad, honestly. It's really not. All markets require it, and even if they didn't, you should still have it. But it's pretty minimal in terms of cost. They usually require that you add them as additionally insured to their certificate, which basically means that if you canceled your policy, that they would be notified. So it's a way of verifying that you have insurance. And usually they'll ask you for about 1 million in liability insurance, commercial. But you can also have farm insurance usually, or sometimes you can tack it on to homeowners. Um, but yeah, you do have to have insurance. Um, Different markets address your like health department certificates and that kind of things differently. We did collect them when I was at markets. We would collect, we had a spreadsheet and we would just collect your certificates for, like if you were a cidery, there's like a cider processing number. If you're a USDA processing facility, there's a number. If you're inspected by Department of Agriculture, there's a certificate. So we would ask for those things. So just your sort of basic things, or if you're operating under cottage laws, then you would just say that. And obviously then we would check what are you bringing? Are those under cottage laws? Depending on how professional the market is, they may or may not do that work for you. So you really should know for yourself, like what you're legally allowed to have at market. Not every market manager will be on top of that. So you can't completely rely on that, but the bigger markets will ask you for those things. Um, Oh, and then something else to be aware of, most markets have an application fee. It's usually like $25. Depending on the market, it might be one application fee for all the markets you apply for in their network or something like that. And then there are usually fees. Um, Unfortunately, again, every market's different with the fees, but the most typical structures are either you pay once a year for your booth, maybe a 10 by 10 space, that's like one pop-up tent, for 300 to 500 a year is usually, that's like on the cheaper end. And then on the more expensive end, and we can debate whether this is good or bad, but a lot of markets will take a percentage of your sales. And that generally runs between 3 and 7%, depending on what you're offering. Like if you're a hot food vendor, you might be at, 7 or sometimes even a little bit more percent. And then the farmers are lower at like 3 to 5% usually. But that's just where I've been at. I know there's a whole range in there. Um, the good thing about the percentage-based fee structure, first of all, usually they're better developed organizations. They have a large marketing network. They have a large vendor network, which means they keep the markets full. They are, a little bit more successful usually. And the other thing is they're financially incentivized for you to do well. If you make 10% more, then they make 10%, or they make more. It's a percentage of your percentage, but they're incentivized for you to succeed because they also then get to make more money. So that's the good thing about it. Whereas, some markets might collect the fee at the beginning of the year and then they're very hands off. They don't have the budget to do any sort of events or customer engagement, marketing, and those things are really essential to markets. So, yeah, you can find markets out there. I used to work for some that were volunteer run, amazing, huge markets. So it's not like it doesn't exist, but it's a little bit harder when it's completely volunteer run to be extremely professional. So, and usually if they are, it's because they've been around for, 20 years, some of them. So. Another general thing just to keep an eye out while you're looking at markets, it takes a market 5 to sometimes up to 10 years to really like become a booming market. If it's not booming after 10 years, it might never boom. But yeah, I mean, it can. So if you start a market that's brand new and you're thinking, I'm going to grow with this market, just be aware that can be a 5-year growth period. Like that's pretty standard just for starting a market. And it's usually, a little painful in the beginning while you get going. And then if you can hang in there, it pays off big if it's a good location. But that's why I'm trying to give you some tools so you can critically look at the location and say, is this a good location for me? Um, the other thing I touched on this earlier, but just making sure that it's the right type of market for you. So if this is a market in I don't know, an area with a lot of young people, for example, not to like stereotype all the young people, because some young people do like to cook, but it does tend to be more families that are taking the time and, going to the market, buying vegetables, prepping meals, that kind of thing. And maybe our younger demographic we see at the farmers market, maybe they want to go and have some coffee and they want to have breakfast and maybe they'll get some fruit, but they're not necessarily going to go and buy all their meat and all that. So just something to be aware of, um, if you're a value add or if you're making hot food, it could be a really good fit to be at a market where it's, there's a lot of like younger people, or it might not even be the age. It might just be the type of market it is. Like we used to do a lunchtime market at the White House in DC, and that market was exclusively people there for lunch. So we would only have, a couple farmers there, and then everybody else would be value added producers because we knew that, or hot food producers because we knew that they wouldn't do well. But yeah, it's just something to look at. Like come whatever market before you I mean, I would ideally you would scout them out now, but if you aren't able to do that and you have to apply and then look at them later, I would just definitely uh go and check it out before you commit, or maybe you know well, sorry, the timing's probably going to be different. This is going to be difficult because ideally you would be doing this for next year because we're a little late in the season now. Like markets are probably closed, a lot of them, or they're closing soon. They usually close the week before Thanksgiving. Um, so this might be a next year advice for the future you, unfortunately. But yeah, definitely take the time to scout out the market. Don't just say, oh, this one looks good. I like this location. It's convenient for me. Believe me, it could be worth it to drive an extra hour to go to a market if you make an extra $3,000 a day. I mean, so it just something to keep in mind. Um, Okay, yeah, and we talked about the product list, but just being very specific on your product list. Like if you offer baked goods and you just say baked goods, it's too vague because we might have somebody who has bagels, and then we already have somebody who has cookies, and we only want muffins. That happens all the time. And then you don't want to invite a baker who just says, "Oh, I bake everything," because you're trying to kind of carve out a niche for each of your farmers. Again, depends on the farm. Some or the market, because some markets will just throw everybody in there. Like not saying anything bad about them, but One Loudon is an example of that in my area. There's like almost 200 vendors, and they just, just add and add and add and add. If you'll pay the fee, you're in, and that can be good, and it can be bad, but they seem to be doing really well with that model. So. Um, yeah, it's sort of sink or swim though. That's the bad thing is if, somebody comes in and takes most of your business, then, so that might be something really important to think about too. What style of management does the market have? Are they sort of going to work with you to make sure you're successful at the market, or are they just going to say sink or swim? And that's all we care about. So, um, okay, let's see. Let's see. Let's talk Linda in. Um, yeah, okay. Sorry. So we talked about choosing the right markets already. So let's talk a little bit about branding. So um if at all possible, when you apply to markets, something that can really, really help you is having a solid brand, because farmers market managers are just like every other company out there. They're hoping you're going to bring people to their company. They're not like you might be looking at them like, oh, they're here to serve me. But no, no, that's not how they're thinking. They're thinking you're here to serve me. So they're thinking, can you bring your customer base to my market? That's how they're seeing it. So anything you can do to show that you have a customer base, that you're popular, people are going to come there just for you. And frankly, it shows a level of professionalism. And the website can be super simple. Or you could do, I mean, best case scenario would be website and a social media page, either Instagram or Facebook. You can usually just link them together and you hit two audiences. That's my recommendation usually. Um, but yeah, you really ideally, you'd have both, because the website is more like your business card and it tells your story. You usually have a page that's like my story. They can get to know you. There's like a list of your products, um, and that kind of thing. The other thing you can do is if you've done other markets in the past, or if you just want to look really professional and go to some extra effort to get in, set up your booth and take a picture of it, because it shows the manager, what your booth's going to be like, how prepared are you. It shows again a level of professionalism. You don't have to do all these things to get into markets. You probably have to do these things to get into a good market. And you eventually should do all these things because they're best practices. But I understand we all start, we start where we start. Um, and yeah, there's always time to grow. Um, so let's see. Oh, yep, social media website. Oh yeah, it's really good if you can have some sort of, you can use business cards a lot of the times. Those are the cheapest option, or you can make a little rack card. I'm sure you've seen those. They sit in the racks at, all sorts of places. Make a little rack card that's got your farm information, what products you sell, like us on, or give us a review on Google Business page, something that you can hand to people as you interact with them so that they remember who they bought the product from, is really, really helpful. So yeah, and then generally the booth, um, some of the biggest, and I actually think we should have a whole other one, if you guys can drop in the chat if this is interesting to you. But I'd love to have a whole other session that we just talk about when you're at the market, best selling practices, but I want to leave plenty of time to talk and we're running out of time. So, but just to give you the 101 of what's the best, you need a tent, you need tent weights. Ideally, you would have a banner at the back of your booth behind you that has your basic farm info, like just super simple. Literally, what's your farm name? What products do you sell? Where's your farm from? What's your contact info? That's it. And like a little, your social media handle maybe. So that's, right in their face. Um, the other thing that can really help you is if you have some sort of, I mean, you can pay like $1,000 to get a branded tent. Um, I think the canopy part is usually like $600 and then the frame is like 400 and you can just like replace the canopies as you need to, but the custom canopies are super expensive. You can, if you want to be cheap, which I was always cheap, you can buy stencils and you can actually paint it on your own tent. But yeah, maybe get your artistic friend or cousin or something to help you with that because but those canopies only cost like $100. The top only costs like 50. Actually, it might be less, like $50, $100. And you could, have whatever your offerings are right at the top of your tent. Um, love our customers at the farmers market, but like you need lots of signage describing what you have or people get confused. They don't like read very closely. So if you have like one little sign that's like beef down here, it's not going to get people's attention. One of the most effective things I've seen is sometimes farmers will hang um it like hangs from the booth, like the booth's right here, it hangs like this and it'll say like eggs and then beef. And it's like a little hanging sign that shows what they have as the person's walking by your stall. So that allows to somebody who's walking by to see more easily what products you have rather than like having to fully turn and look at your booth, they're able to just see it walking by. Um, that is very effective. Um, The other thing is if you're in well, actually, this really applies to everything, but we especially talk about this with produce, something called pilot high and let it fly. Anybody heard of this? Well, it just basically, you'll see, especially the orchards do this because obviously they have a lot of product and they're just selling their prime product. And then, unfortunately, sometimes they don't even keep all of it, they have to like toss it or something. Um, but oh, sorry, I got distracted by another thought. Forgive me. Oh, sorry. But yeah, so but it's really, really helpful to stack your display higher. You want it to look really full. This is the same thing they do at the grocery stores. That's why they OCD face. It's called facing, where they go around the store and they pull everything to the front. So everything always looks full and abundant. It's a psychological thing, us silly humans. But when they see, just a few left, people will sometimes look at that and go, oh, why did nobody else want that? And it's like a weird psychological thing. I'm sure we could do experiments on it at the market and prove that for the same fruit, they would neglect it if it was, just like one straggly fruit here. But yeah, that applies to all sorts of products though. Like I know it can be tempting to not want to like set up a whole big display because it's a lot of work, but the displays do sell. If you have like jams or something, I really love apple crates. If you go make friends with your local orchard, they'll sell one to you for $25 usually, if you're lucky. But those make really good, like rustic looking displays. I'm sure you can buy them for cheap on Amazon also. But yeah, anything that can kind of give you more height real estate is really, really helpful in selling products. Um, I mentioned the QR codes with with your little handout. I've also seen like if you don't want to do like the little handout, you can also just put a little QR code on your tent leg, and oh, by the way, get a laminator. Best money you'll ever spend for farmers market marketing. Laminator. It's great. You make signs super quickly. They're waterproofed because you're going to get rained on. And you can, have the same sign every week that you put out instead of having to like, you make if you don't, they'll get crumpled up and ruined in a day. So, and you can make really pretty ones. I've seen really beautiful, like handwritten ones, and then, they cut them out and laminate them. So yeah, but doing that with your QR code to your business review page, really helpful. Or just wherever you want to push people to. Maybe you want them to sign up for your newsletter, which, by the way, probably the number one marketing scheme at a farmer's market is a newsletter scheme. That makes it sound negative, but people really want to get to know you the farmer. They want to know what's special, what's coming new, what's seasonal. So the read rates on those newsletters are very high, and most of the farmers that I know that are doing really good money at the markets are doing a newsletter. They're sending out, oh, tomatoes are coming this week, and people show up ready to buy the tomatoes, which is a great situation for you. So I highly recommend it, even though it might feel like a lot of work to send out a newsletter. Maybe you do it once a month. Usually you pick a few section themes to make it easy on yourself. Like, what are you going to have? What's a special? What's an update from the farm? Keep it simple. I found, especially I worked at one farm. I had my very farmy farmer, and he would write the newsletter, and it was very just like, and people loved it because they loved him and it was his personality, and that's what they really enjoyed. And they didn't want that, perfect polished thing. They wanted, something authentic and like real about the farmer. So just saying, like, just be yourself. That's all people really want anyways. So no need to do anything fancy. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, we need a whole other session to talk about all the good things you can do to increase your sales at markets. But I'll say quick ones. Sampling. People love samples. It gives you something to talk to them about, gives you something to draw them in. Oftentimes people, not that you should do this intentionally, but like oftentimes if people try something and they like it, even if they maybe weren't going to buy it, they'll buy something anyways. So and the other thing you can do is suggest one more item for people to like, if they get goat cheese, oh, like this is really good with goat cheese. It depends. Like, got to keep it organic. You don't want to be too salesy, but um, yeah, once you have the customer already there, it's easier to increase a sale than to get a whole new customer. So, um, and then in terms of sales expectations, so I mean, I would say the minimum, and this is like, obviously you can do whatever you want. You're a small business. Most of you're paying yourselves, and you're a farmer's market, no matter what, is good exposure for your business. So even if it's a market that isn't making a lot of money, it's still exposure for your business. So it's never a waste. However, we all need to sustain ourselves. So I would say aiming for around $1,000 a day is probably what you want on the low end. Um, if you're, maybe you're a bakery or something, you might be your base or your bottom might be like 500. Depends how far you're traveling, depends on a lot of things, but um that's probably like break even if I had to guess at 500. And then 1,000 for a produce vendor is not a great day, honestly. Um Ideally, as a produce vendor, you'd want to be making like 2 to 3,000. I've known produce vendors to make 5,000, 7,000. Um, I know orchards that have been doing it for 20 years. They make, somewhere around 20,000 a day at a farmer's market. So, I mean, you can make a healthy living at just doing farmers markets if you really invest in finding these good locations and where you're making enough money, you really can do well. Meat, I'd say, is maybe around like the 1,000 to 2,000, depends. Again, meat's heavy and you have to keep it frozen, so there's some extra cost there. But yeah, just to give you guys some ballpark things to think about. Um, and yeah, I think that's probably all I wanted to cover, Madison, so we can leave plenty of room for questions and maybe get into some case studies. Um,
Sounds perfect. So there's two questions in the chat technically. So let's see here. If your name is My Nap, if you wanted to come off mute and say your question out loud, that would be great. And then we can read Kathy's question in the chat.
Perfect.
So this is Carla. I think that's me. I can't believe that my nap is up there. That's crazy.
Hi, Carl.
Um, Hi, how are you?
Good. Nice to hear from you.
Yeah, likewise. So I have a couple questions that they may sound silly, but I want to ask anyway. Um, so I'm very strategic in the way I do things, and for me, this would be my first time introducing myself as a potential vendor at a local market because I also want to eventually do a farmer's market. So I want to start as a vendor and get some experience in that space. And so, uh, as a person who owns land in an urban area who wants to eventually do sort of an urban style farmers market just on some land to bring the community together around produce and things like that. Um, what is the distinction between sort of like this community based sort of neighborhood place where you can buy, food from maybe other little pockets in the community that have like, say, community gardens, and they bring those together in one place. That would not constitute a farmer's market, correct?
I mean, the world is your oyster. There's no like technical definitions, although there's some city ordinance type definitions around farmers
Okay.
markets, like in terms
Mm-hmm.
of getting your permitting and zoning and that sort of stuff straight. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, I've seen all different types of models of farmers markets. Um, I've seen that type of model where it's more like a co-op model,
Yeah.
or or like a food hub aggregation model. Maybe it's all
Mm-hmm.
sold but from local farmers. So I wouldn't. Uh, it's probably not a farmer's market in the way, like, you probably have to just explain it to people. Maybe you'd call it more like a farm stand, because that
A
people are more
farm stand. Okay.
because people are more familiar with that as like a reseller's, like, you're buying it from another farmer, usually at a farm stand, although it depends. But farmers markets often imply that you grew everything that's being sold. That's the only thing
Okay.
got to be. And some markets have rules about it. So some markets, like, you cannot do that. So, but if you're starting your own market, you can do whatever you want. I mean,
Okay. Yeah, because my thought was, and I know that there's a very urban area, but there are sections to it. And I know that within those sections, there are lots, for example, that neighborhood is growing food in, but I haven't seen one where all the people who are you know, uh are curating these lots come together in one place to invite the greater community around all, that section. And I thought that would be a cool way to do two things. One is to bring the community together and then have more options and food available for those in that surrounding area. Everything I do, you'll find I'm super ambitious about kind of how I approach stuff, but strategic at the same time. But I don't want to find myself, and I will go to the city with this. I don't want to find myself using terminology that is inappropriate. And so maybe I shouldn't be calling it a farmer's market. Maybe I should be calling it a community market or
it's
something of
true,
that
because
nature.
farmers
Okay.
markets are more regulated, I think. It depends how many people you think you're gonna attract and how many,
Hmm.
like, parking spaces you'll need at once, and whether you'll be causing a big crowd or will it just be a trickle of people. Like, but yeah, you probably would rather be regulated as a farm stand. At least that's how it is in my area. But unfortunately, like most regulations, it's different in every single area. Like,
Hmm.
I've had to do it in, or run markets in DC, Maryland, Virginia, which also was different between Prince William and Fairfax County. So it's literally every single place is different. But
Right.
yeah.
So my grandma, she had a produce stand over there. And so I think if I started out at, I guess my question is, would it make sense to start out as like say a produce stand and then get that growth and then
I
over
would say,
time
yeah,
maybe do the, okay, thank
I
you.
would,
Thank
yeah,
you for allowing me to speak.
of course. And yeah, I've seen some people do farm stands if you are in an area where you can have like um, what's it called? It's just, sorry, where you put out a box basically and people just self-pay. I've seen a lot of success with that. You'd be surprised. It just depends on your area maybe, but that's a viable option for a lot of areas to, because that saves you a ton. I mean, the labor of paying somebody to sit there and make sales is is more expensive than probably somebody that like didn't pay for something on accident or intentionally. So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I think that's an awesome idea. And yeah, we should stay in touch. Keep me posted on that.
Oh, okay. Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. And then let's see, Kathy, do farmers markets promote opportunities for their farmers to pair up and create and produce more value-added products, or is it just they would prefer the farmers network amongst themselves?
Yeah, I think
Um,
you answered that, but if you could go a little more in depth, that's great too. Thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure. No, it is unfortunately mostly that they're just like, oh, we like that you would do this, but nobody's like helping you is usually the case, just because people don't have tons of capacity, generally. But sometimes if you have a nice market manager, they'll help you. Or actually, I might go around to the other vendors at the market and be like, hey, who could I buy this from? Or
Yeah.
um, something like that.
And,
But
and
yeah.
that was my thing, because like you said, that they're competitive. So, I mean, how do you get, what do you call it? Icebreaker or something like that, so
Yeah,
they can
get your foot in
kind
the
of,
door. Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, like I said before, if you're able to show up in person to the market you're applying to before applications, which again, the window's kind of closing on this. We were just a smidge behind the ball on getting this together, the timing wise. But yeah, I would definitely, you can email them as well, though. If you don't hear back, you could send them an email. Maybe they don't have any way to include pictures or anything, maybe a follow-up email with a little summary and some pictures, or hey, can I stop by and bring samples? Or um yeah, I mean, I used to love it when people would bring samples, and it did help. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes there were a few folks that I wasn't honestly considering just based on the application, and then the product was so good. I was like, "Oh, okay. Well." So, yeah, but I know it is tough. That's
Hmm.
yeah, it is tough initially. But we could
Yeah.
talk more offline, Kathy, about potential if
Okay.
you're looking at any
Y-
in
Yeah, I'm just, learning and preparing, so I'm not there yet,
no,
but
that's good.
definitely I will have those questions.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think a lot of what we talked about today was covered in the blog there, but if you go look at the blog, we wrote out all the timelines and everything because that's probably helpful, and like the checklist of what you'd need to apply to the markets. So that's just on our website if you go to the blog page on our website.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. Other questions about farmers markets, challenges?
I have a simple question, I hope. I'm Raylan from G's Delights. Hi.
Nice to meet you officially
Me
or
too.
in
Me too.
whatever digitally.
Yeah. And I hopped on 5 minutes late, so I apologize if you've already said this. So we launched in June, and we weren't allowed to work in the commercial kitchen. We're a value-added producer, and we
Hmm.
weren't allowed to work in the kitchen until then. And so pretty much the entire summer, which is the peak farmers market season, we were building our inventory. So we do freeze-dried produce, trying to fight food waste with the farmers and growers. And so by the time we had enough inventory, we were a little late in applying to farmers markets. It was like, one, we were too late, two, they didn't know us, and three, they didn't really understand the concept of what we were doing. And so you had mentioned that December and January, I believe, is like when applications open.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of big hub, or do we just go directly to the farmers market websites that we want to work with directly and follow their timeline? Just want to make sure we do it right.
Great question. I didn't even think to talk about that. Yeah. Unfortunately, every farmer's market has its own process. There are two there are two sites though that you can check, and here I'll drop them in the chat, Madison. But one is called Manage My Market.
Okay.
And so that is a platform that many different markets use in our region to like to do their application process. So you'll be
Okay.
alerted through there, and you make one profile and add your products and stuff, and then you apply to the markets. But you might,
Perfect.
yeah, so that's the good one. There's also Farm Stand, which, hold on, let me make I think it's Farm Stand. I'm like 90% sure it's Farm Stand.
Okay.
But they're not as popular, but some markets also use them, and you can search for markets to apply through them.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah, it's like everybody has a different process basically. Some people have, just like a Google form, or
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay. Nope, it's good to know.
yeah.
I'll check these two sites out though. Thank you so much.
Of course. There is the Maryland, what is it called? Maryland Expo guide. It has a list of all the farmers markets. We could probably send that in the follow-up email as well.
Okay.
You can just make a quick note of that, Madison, so I don't forget. But yeah, we can send out at least that list for the Maryland farmers markets. And then in Virginia, which, disclaimer, my expertise is more in Virginia, to be honest. Like if anybody's looking for like questions about Northern Virginia farmers markets, I can probably help in more detail.
Do you have a contact for Central Virginia area or no?
Not so much in Central Virginia, but I have the best place to go, you guys. And so the Virginia Farmers Market Association,
Okay.
they are a wonderful organization. Actually, can we put that in the email too, Madison? Thank you. So I'll send you guys their info, but they have every year they do a conference, and they have a bunch of workshops and goes into all different farmers market specific topics in depth. They have a bunch of those on their website you can watch from previous, they're like Zoom webinars on different topics related to farmers markets, food safety stuff. I mean, it's just a treasure trove of information. And most of the information, there's nothing like that in Maryland, but most of the Virginia information does apply in Maryland, except for maybe like there's like little things that might be different, but like the general information is really good. And they have a network. So um yeah, like there's a regional network in Central Virginia, and you could reach out to whoever's in charge of that network right now, and they could probably give you a list. Or there might be a list even on the website, actually.
Okay. But you said you'll put in the email. Okay.
Yes, we'll send a follow-up email with the recording and all these links that we're mentioning.
Thank you so much.
Of
Yes,
course.
thank you so much.
My pleasure. Truly. This is so much fun for me. I've missed farmers markets. I hope to return one day.
So I heard you talk about revenue hope for fruits, vegetables, and meats. What about value-added producers? Like, what's a number we should be looking at to see if this was worth it or not? If you know that. If not, it's okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say you might like start at the $500 to $700 range.
Okay.
It does depend how much inventory you have, though, how many products you have, how
Yeah.
expensive your products are,
Yeah.
how often customers would buy your products. I mean,
No, that's perfect. We worked our first event October 26th and we hit 700. So we're
that's
right there. Okay.
that's really good. What kind of
Okay.
event was it?
It was at Big Oyster Brewery in Delaware, and it was their Farm Fest. And so
Oh,
it's like an additional like enhanced component to like a family festival, if you will. And so they could have, it was family oriented. So the kids and could play out in the big playground.
healthy snack.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We had watermelon,
So we're looking
apples,
for markets
pears.
with kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's a really strong showing because
Okay.
yeah, usually at a one-off event, I've found sales will be lower unless you're like a value-added product. Maybe you sell like lemonade or like, something that people want while they're walking around an event.
Mhm.
But otherwise, those events can be, although it was a farm specific one, which is nice. But yeah, that's a really good first showing. If you were doing like, I mean, I would hope ultimately you'd be doing like 1,000 to 2,000 a week regularly.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, maybe more. I mean, good at some market. I've known value added producers at good markets to do $3,000 and $4,000 a day.
Oh,
I
wow.
worked
I'll
I
take
worked
that.
for a juice company that did 7,000 a day at a
Oh,
really big farmers market though, and we had a crew of like 4 or 5 girls working one
wow.
guys at one time. So it was a big setup, but
That's awesome.
yeah, it's possible. Yeah, same with like the orchards making 20K. They've also got 10 people working. They've got
Yeah.
four
Yep.
tents or 5 tents. It's a big,
Mhm.
you know. That's the other thing. If you can get or if you warrant extra space, that I do think that helps your sales having more, it's just like any storefront, having more store window sales is going to help you. So
Yep. That makes
fight
sense.
fight for it if you can, nicely, or don't make your
Thank
managers mad, but
thank you again.
advocate for yourself. Yeah, of course. Any other last minute questions? Otherwise, I'm going to start talking about tent weights. Well, briefly, because nobody wants to talk about tent weights, and I don't either. But I just wanted to share with you there are a lot of really inexpensive ways to make tent weights rather than having to go and buy the little sandbag ones that leak all over your car. You can fill the PVC pipes with, just look up PVC pipe tent weight. You can make it at Home Depot for like $30. So that's my 2 cents. Or you can get the jug looking ones. They're gray and you can fill those with water or sand. Filling them is not fun. So, and if it's water, it's going to leak in your car one day. But yeah, just other little tips of tips of the trade. All right. Any other questions? Anybody have any farmers market struggles they want to share with the team? We'll workshop for you.
Is there like anything considered to be conflict of interest or any type of conflict? Like, how should I put it? With the with ethics or something like that. I mean, is there anything that I'm asking a question to get an understanding of what's the culture of doing business in the farmers market, and because you don't want to thinking you're going to strategize in sales and you're doing something that might not be cool, and then you're blackballed.
Like undercutting another vendor or something.
Yeah, like, well, some things, of course, are common sense, but I mean, if you could just kind of speak to it in general, because you can't assume that everybody knows the basics. What's the rule? What's the general rule of doing business in farmers market?
I'll definitely say I always felt it was very sort of communal, or that was the positive side of it. Um Basically it's really good if you're able to make friends with the other farmers market vendors, or at least have relationships with them, because then you can have a lot of good synergy between each other, like if you're sending somebody to the cheese person because they're your favorite cheese, maybe they're sending all their customers to you because you have their favorite tomatoes. I don't know. um, and also just like that sort of neighborly attitude can be really, really helpful. Your workers having trouble setting up their tent, or they just, they need to run to the bathroom and somebody needs to watch their bank. Basically, it behooves you to be kind to everyone at the market because, I mean, kindness is good anyways, but also it benefits you financially and it just makes your life better. There's often drama about pricing, and it's usually the farmers. Love you, farmers. But yeah, that'll fight over, maybe they're selling strawberries for $5 and somebody comes in and is selling them for $3 and they'll get really mad about that because, oh, now you're taking my customers. And so I have seen, I mean, you do what you want though. It's your business. But like I have seen farmers generally tend to try and not undercut each other too much. Maybe like they'll go $1 lower, or maybe if they know that person was in the market first, they'll like intentionally match their price so that they're not undercutting them, even though they could go lower. Um, but I mean, it's all up to you, obviously. Like if you feel comfortable ruffling feathers or not. Things can definitely get political in the markets though, in terms of like so many times, you try to bring in another farmer and like the farmers that are there will get really annoyed or they won't want you to sell certain products that you have. And so you might, but usually they navigate that on the front end so that by the time you're in the market, you don't have to deal with that. Um,
Okay.
but it's generally a very like I've had a very positive experience in terms of for the most part, like people working together and
Good.
supporting each other and yeah, it's
Yeah,
usually
yeah, I guess that question really was posed for that scenario you presented, like this one big lump pot that you said in Loudoun County, they just take applications, and if they have the space, hey, go for it,
yeah.
And you just have to kind of weave your way through being politically correct, but at the same time making money. So
Yeah. Well, at a market like that, it's like such a free for all. I would just do whatever I wanted at that market because it's like somebody different's going to be there tomorrow in the market. So, and then what, you're going to change because of them, It's like so unstable. How do you even,
that's true.
I
That's
don't know. But if it's a market where it's like the same people and they've all been there for 30 years and you're the only new person, yeah, you don't want to like come in and like,
and blackballed in the end,
I
and
mean,
then in the long term you lose your money. You have money today, but you can't get the same type of profit like you did in the future. And that's I would want to try to mitigate that because that's your branding, right?
definitely, definitely. And word of mouth's a strong driver of traffic. So,
Yeah,
Hmm.
ask you on that, yeah, because that raises some really good ideas or questions for me, and that is, can't you have rules of engagement in advance that sort of kind of prevent people from you're breaking rule 5 if you do certain things, like say
oh
for
yeah.
example, you can put all that stuff in advance, and when people sign up to be a part of the market, then that holds them accountable to also follow the rules.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, totally agree, but like she said, that it's the market people who are really supposed to do that, but not all of them are doing that. But you say you're in an area that it's a good market, you're in there, but you're having to, weed through this stuff yourself because it's no holds bar, like she was talking
Yeah,
about.
there's no rules basically, huh?
yeah,
Yeah.
not in terms of not there's no even the markets I worked at there were where and I'm about to share this with you, there's like a 20-page agreement you have to sign. They don't include anything about they don't want to do anything to control the like they don't want to put anything in writing to control the competition at market. They do that more during the vendor selection process, if that makes sense. Like um
It does. Thank you for that. Hmm.
and here's the agreement. Maybe we can add this to the email, Madison. It's getting long. But this is just an example of what a more advanced market agreement looks like and all the stuff that they require. And this is probably the most advanced agreement you will see. Most of them aren't this detailed. Um, but yeah, there's some information about yeah, like codes of conduct, and that kind of thing. Like if you were like cursing in the market, there's like things like that that you're not allowed to do, but um
That's pretty detailed.
it's very detailed. Yeah, it actually used to be longer. I'm like, oh, they shortened it. It's down to it's only 14 pages now, guys. Um Yeah, actually, it did used to be longer. So, but yeah, that'll give you a good idea of the worst, or the most case scenario of information you'd have to provide a market probably or agree to. Um, but all right. So sorry, I just noticed we're
Oh, I had a question.
okay. Yeah, last
Um,
question. Yep.
yeah, okay. So let me figure out which one I want to ask. So basically, with all of these different markets, and their different fees, like, is there any way to, like, I mean, I guess you could visit, but I mean, that doesn't give you the whole picture. Is there like any, like, collection of information so you could compare the markets and, like, before you go out there?
No, but that's a great business idea for me. Kidding. Have a guy. I mean, honestly, though, yes, people would love that because it is a lot of legwork to go out there and figure out, what markets need more vendors and what vendors are they looking for, and then, actually getting in is kind of a lot of legwork. So I wish there was, but besides the list, the Maryland Farm Expo list and the Virginia Farmers Market Association are the only networks I know of that make that list. And it's not detailed. It's just like the market days and times. It's not like, and maybe the website, so that would streamline your effort slightly. But yeah, no, it is like literally Googling every website. That is good food for thought, Madison, isn't it? Wouldn't that be a cool little document for
I
kids?
think you should use AI and do it.
Hmm. I like that idea. The only problem is a lot of the data doesn't exist on the interwebs. So we'd have to like figure out how to dump the data into like the farmers market managers would actually have to put the information into the internet somewhere in order to get AI to.
Oh, I see.
But I
I see
love
what you mean.
that idea though. That would
Yeah,
be
that would
really
be,
cool.
I mean, actually, if there was a publication that had listed state by state,
Yes.
all of that information,
Yes.
that's something you could uh, find a great amount of value with, because there are people who are retired that would love to just go, with their preserves or whatever that they've stored for a time, and sell to other people. I mean, that I would personally get great joy out of doing something like that in my retirement days. So there you go.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. We've definitely kicked around the idea of an AI robot, but we were thinking more for like regulations because those are really fun to navigate. Um, but yeah, no, that's a really, really good idea. And yeah, don't tempt me with a good time. I love to think about farmers markets.
Too funny.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. We'll send you the resource links afterwards. And if you have any thoughts about a farmers market part two, like maybe once the season starts and people are in markets, best practices, marketing tactics, or something like that, let me know because I'd love
Yeah,
to do.
thank you. It's always a pleasure to be in these spaces. I learn something every single time, so
Oh,
we
thanks,
appreciate
Carla.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you, Carla. Thanks,
Mm,
Kathy.
yeah, bye.
Have a good evening, everybody. Thanks, Janelle. Oh, oh, the Farmers Alliance organization. Oh, that's cool.